It was widely accepted in medical science that pig tissues shared approximately 95% similarity with human tissues. This biological resemblance had long made pigs useful substitutes in anatomical studies, especially during periods when human dissection was prohibited. The story followed a young butcher named Hamaru, often called Maru, who worked daily with pigs. He was skilled and efficient, but his growing competence stirred resentment in his boss, a muscular man with 5 years of experience. One day, the boss tried to intimidate Maru, slamming an axe into the wall behind him and asking whether he truly believed he could replace someone with more experience. Maru, unfazed, told him to leave the axe alone, warning that if he didn't, there might not be a bench left to work on. The manager of the food livestock company, Han Junho, often expressed regret about selling meat, while Maru focused on his cutting tasks. Hong interrupted to compliment his knife skills, noting how impressive they were for someone who had only been with the company for a year. Maru asked him to stop disturbing him. Han complied, then turned his attention to Kim Yong, the company's accountant, who was busy devouring food. She seemed to enjoy her job immensely. Han demanded that she return to the office. Later, Han hugged Maru and claimed he cared deeply for him. Maru didn't believe it, recalling how poorly he was paid, how he was forced to work without breaks, and how Han often dragged him into sleepless nights. Maru added that he was frequently pulled around after hours and had to handle the slaughtering himself. Han justified his behavior by saying it was because he loved Maru and remembered his first day at work. Back then, Maru had appeared timid, holding a dagger with uncertainty, but he hadn't hesitated to complete the task. That moment convinced Hong that Maru was a natural-born butcher. Their conversation continued in the bathhouse, where Hong once again forced Maru to scrub his back. Maru, frustrated, warned that he expected to be paid for such tasks. When Hong asked if he truly needed money that badly, Maru confirmed. Hong then mentioned a lucrative job opportunity, not life-changing, but enough to help Maru move out of his basement room. Maru, eager for financial relief, asked about the job. Hong explained that he had studied in Japan and that Maru's next destination would be there. A few days later, Maru boarded a plane to Japan. The job was at an urban livestock farm where urgent labor was needed. 6 months passed, and Maru worked without a single day off. The conditions weren't much different from Korea, but he preferred enduring hardship in his home country. Despite claims of a labor shortage, Maru remained the only employee. A yakuza-like man watched him daily, smoking cigarettes. Maru cursed at him in Korean, knowing the man wouldn't understand. The Japanese man smiled, mistaking it for a greeting. Maru sensed something was wrong. He was instructed to separate only the ribs from pigs, discarding all other parts. The ribs felt unusually heavy, and he noticed a thin line on the bone, suggesting they had been cut and reattached. He suspected the ribs were being used to smuggle something. Still, he focused on finishing his work without drawing attention. Eventually, Maru called Hong, shouting that he couldn't take it anymore. He complained about the overtime, the strange tasks, and the yakuza member observing him. Hong dismissed his concerns, reminding him that he had always worked overtime in Korea. Maru insisted that the environment felt off. Hong argued that he had gone to great lengths to get Maru the job in Japan, knowing he needed money for his sister's school fees and his mother's car debt. He urged Maru to endure 1 more month, promising to bring him home afterward. With no other option, Maru agreed, though he resented being trapped by his family's financial burdens. The next day, Maru returned to work, determined to endure for the sake of money. Suddenly, someone called his name in Japanese. Maru struggled to remain composed as the man pinched his cheeks and praised his knife skills. Maru noticed a gun on the man's waist, confirming his suspicion that he was working for a Yakuza-affiliated company. The watchman announced he would leave early for his girlfriend's birthday, and his little brother would take over. However, the newcomer was clearly not young. He greeted Maru and mentioned that he had already collected the ribs. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. It was an earthquake. Maru clung to the countertop while the watchman explained the situation. The newcomer clutched the ribs tightly, but they slipped and fell, releasing a white powder into the air. Maru quickly covered his nose. The watchman tried to downplay the incident, claiming the powder came from the bones and that it was no big deal. Maru resumed work, and the men quickly collected the ribs. The newcomer asked if Maru was truly from Korea. When the watchman confirmed, the newcomer remarked that Maru probably wouldn't recognize the hallucinogenic substances or understand Japanese. The watchman yelled at him to be quiet, but Maru had understood everything. Realizing the mistake, the watchman pulled a gun on Maru. Everything happened quickly, and Maru couldn't believe his life might end after 6 months of hard labor. He refused to accept such a fate. Red liquid soon splattered through the air. Maru had originally accepted the butcher job because it was the only one available. On his first day, he had faced a pig without hesitation, impressing Hong, who noted that most people were overwhelmed after their first kill. But Maru was different. He continued without remorse, proving he was perfect for the role. Now, he had to use those same skills to survive. With a swift motion, he severed the watchman's arm using his sharp blade. The man screamed in pain, but Maru saw him as just another pig. He knew exactly where to strike and didn't hesitate. Even though it was a human dot after the watchman collapsed, the newcomer attacked Maru, slamming him against the wall and punching him repeatedly. He shouted that Maru had ruined the boss's proposal plans. Maru, blooded and bruised, realized he wouldn't survive unless he fought back. He used his dagger, but the wound barely affected the muscular man. The newcomer mocked the blades weakness and began choking Maru as Maru lost consciousness. A flashback emerged. Hong had once taught him how to handle pigs with strong bones and thick fat. He said a traditional dagger was enough if the butcher could instinctively find the right path. At that moment, Maru saw the path Hong had described. He struck the enemies, ribs slicing through to the other side. Maru realized he was truly born to be a butcher. The newcomer collapsed on top of him. Maru pushed the body aside, stunned by what he had done. He repeated to himself that it was self-defense, but feared the police wouldn't believe him. Turning himself in wasn't an option. After surviving the brutal confrontation in Japan, Maru began contemplating his next move. He feared what might happen if the Yakuza discovered his escape. An idea crossed his mind. Perhaps he could erase all traces of the incident by setting the warehouse ablaze. But before he could act, someone burst into the room and opened fire. Maru immediately ran for cover, dodging bullets as the assailant chased him into the freezer. The attacker declared it a dead end and proclaimed that it was the end for the butcher. Silence fell over the room as the man crept slowly among the hanging pigs, searching for his target. Spotting a boot, he assumed he had found Maru and fired. Without hesitation, too late, he realized it was a trap. Maru had used the pigs to mislead the attacker. He shoved the carcasses toward the man, causing him to lose balance and fall. Seizing the moment, Maru swung his dagger and struck the man's shoulder. The attacker laughed, mocking Maru for not aiming at his throat. He raised his gun to fire, but nothing happened. His fingers couldn't move. This paralysis was no accident. Maru had remembered Chief Hong's teachings about a cluster of nerves in pigs that extended from the spinal cord to the forelimbs. Hong had explained that humans shared the same anatomy. A precise strike to that area would render a person immobile. Maru had once been skeptical of the claim, but now he knew Hong hadn't lied. The third attacker was neutralized. 6 hours. Later, Maru's plane landed in Korea. He breathed a sigh of relief, grateful that no Yakuza members had followed him. Before fleeing Japan, he had set fire to the warehouse, hoping it would destroy all evidence. With his tracks erased, he believed he could return to his normal life. As he approached his home, Maru noticed the lights were on. Assuming his family was awake, he smiled and entered, announcing that he had brought money and gifts, but the scene inside was horrifying. Furniture had been overturned, the house was in disarray, and his family was nowhere to be found. He called out for his mother and younger sister, also named Maru, but received no response. Suddenly, his foot brushed against something on the floor, a rib coated in the same white powder he had seen in Japan. It was a clear sign that something was terribly wrong. A voice then asked if he was happy to be home. Maru turned toward the sound and saw a group of unfamiliar men. Fear gripped him as he wondered if the Yakuza had taken his family. One of the men, wearing glasses, reached into his suit pocket. Maru braced himself, thinking it was a gun. Instead, the man revealed a badge from the Narcotics and Organized Crime Investigation Department. The officer, named Han Tae-sik, asked Maru to come with him. Confused, Maru asked why the narcotics team was in his house. He insisted he hadn't done anything illegal. Tae-sik raised his hand and clarified that the police weren't accusing him of anything. The house was in chaos because Maru's mother had reacted violently to their visit. Maru couldn't understand why his mother would behave that way. Tae-sik then revealed that Maru's mother was involved with narcotics. Maru had grown up in a troubled household, and even after the family's financial ruin, his mother continued spending recklessly. He had always seen her as immature, but never imagined she would use hallucinogens. The police reported that she had gone berserk, destroyed the house, and had to be hospitalized. Maru witnessed her trying to attack the doctors. Tae-sik presented evidence found in the house narcotics hidden inside pork ribs. This method of distribution had only recently emerged. He asked Maru if he knew when his mother began using the drugs. Maru said he didn't. The officer handed him a card and asked him to reach out if he remembered anything. After leaving the hospital, Officer Lee complained in the parking lot about Tae-sik smoking inside the car. Tae-sik explained that he couldn't open the window because smoking was prohibited in underground lots. Lee lost his temper, but Tae-sik calmly reminded him that the car was his, so he made the rules. Lee fell silent. Tae-sik then instructed him to investigate the boy named Maru. Meanwhile, Maru sat in the hospital, trying to make sense of everything. He was certain the Yakuza hadn't moved faster than him, so it made no sense for the drugs to reach his mother in just 6 hours. Then his phone rang. It was Chief Hong. Hong said he had heard about the fire at the Japanese factory and expressed concern. Maru replied that he was busy and would call later. But Hong revealed that he knew Maru had returned to Korea because of his mother's drug use. He laughed maniacally, leaving Maru stunned. Maru asked Hong to repeat himself. Hong questioned whether Maru had received the ribs he sent. When Maru didn't respond, Hong assumed he believed the ribs came from the Yakuza. Maru asked if he had done something wrong. Hong replied that he hadn't. He was a great butcher. He claimed to have prepared Maru's place long ago. Maru shouted, demanding to know what nonsense Hong was talking about. Hong then confessed that he had been the one sending drugs to Maru's family, including his mother. He threatened to send them to Maru's sister next, but only if Maru refused his offer. Hong said he wanted to use Maru's talent to expand his company and build a tower in Gangnam. He told Maru a car was waiting for him in the parking lot. From now on, Maru's work wouldn't be limited to pigs. Hong hung up, leaving Maru in silence. The protagonist felt himself sinking into darkness. The scene shifted to an unknown location. Two men argued about who would carry the pigs. The boy with glasses refused to help, but the man inside the truck unzipped a bag, revealing they weren't just transporting pigs. He pulled out several black bags, saying it was Hong's order. The man with the scarred face was Bake, the global head of livestock production. The boy with glasses was named Choi. He suggested hiring a new recruit to handle the hard labor. Bake reminded Choi that he had been his subordinate since losing a game of rock, paper, scissors, and therefore should be responsible for the bodies. Choi joked, asking if Bake was afraid of new recruits. Bake's veins bulged with anger, and the conflict escalated. He threatened to beat Choi, but Choi backed down and returned to the car. Night fell. Bake was sleeping peacefully when a cat woke him. He assumed the animal had come because of the smell of meat. After playing with it briefly, he realized Choi hadn't returned. Concerned, he went to check and found the door slightly ajar. Inside the dark room, the cat panicked and fled. Bake entered cautiously and was shocked by the destruction. He saw someone sleeping and assumed it was the new recruit. He asked where Choi was, worried that Chief Hong would scold him for the delay. When he received no answer, he nudged the figure with his foot only to discover it was Choi, dead with red liquid dripping from his mouth. Bake laughed bitterly, saying it looked like Choi had received a visit from the superiors. He remarked that this time, Choi hadn't been able to defend himself with his dagger. Bake believed his colleague deserved that fate. What he didn't know was that the person responsible for Choi's death was still in the room and now targeting him. Maru stepped forward, eyes filled with rage. Bake mocked him, calling him just another member of Generation Z as Maru closed the distance. Bake laughed at the sight of the new recruit. In the next moment, he blocked Maru's dagger with a power hammer. Maru was stunned. One counterattack had disarmed him. Bake brought the hammer close to Maru's face, interrupting his thoughts. Meanwhile, Chief Hong was calmly preparing a party with his subordinates. The employees discussed the latest developments, noting that Hong had sent Choi and Bake to retrieve the new recruit. Some thought it was excessive, but one guard defended the decision, saying the new recruit seemed different. The officials debated who was stronger. Some claimed Bake could easily defeat Choi. Jun Chek recalled working with Bake and remembered how everyone treated him as a legend. Once, Bake had defeated all the bullies and gangsters in an entire city using only his hands. Bake had once been a formidable fighter, but what truly elevated him to legendary status was the hammer gifted to him by Director Han. It was said to be invincible, an item that perfected his brute strength. From that moment on, Bake was known as the Unstoppable Bull. Or so people believed. During his battle with Maru, Bake swung the hammer with fury. Maru dodged but stumbled awkwardly to the ground. Bake was stunned that someone with such clumsy movements could have defeated Choi. Fueled by disbelief and excitement, he intensified his attacks. Maru continued to evade the hammer strikes, but Bake laughed maniacally as he chased him down. Eventually, he slammed Maru into a wall, demonstrating his superior strength and agility. Maru felt overwhelmed. Bake gave him no time to think, launching another wave of attacks. Though Maru managed to land a superficial strike with his broken dagger, he couldn't find a decisive opening. When he finally spotted a blind spot and aimed to end the fight, Bake stopped the dagger with his teeth. The sight was horrifying. Maru had never faced someone so seemingly invincible. But he refused to give up. Maru swung his dagger again, but it barely scratched Bake. The man mocked him, saying even a mosquito bite would hurt more. He decided it was time to end the fight. Maru narrowly avoided another hammer strike, but Bake's foot landed squarely on his face, sending him crashing to the ground. Bake dragged him by the leg and hurled him into the wall. As Maru lay stunned, Bake prepared another blow, but suddenly pain shot through his wrist. He realized too late that Maru had been targeting his vital points all along. Maru, now serious and cold, asked if anyone actually laughed at Baek's terrible jokes. The insult struck a nerve. Baek, who had always prided himself on his strength and charisma, felt deeply offended. He had introduced himself as a tourist and taken pride in it. Enraged, he vowed to finish off the rookie. Meanwhile, back at the party, Chief Hong was hanging a portrait of Maru on the wall. He admired the young butcher's looks, claiming Maru could be a celebrity if he wanted. The employees complimented the artwork and Hong agreed, wondering aloud how Baek was faring. He insisted that no one on his team could defeat the Bull. The staff agreed Baek was unmatched, but Hong's expression darkened. He demanded to know why no one was showing respect for Maru. The employees hesitated, unsure if it was appropriate to treat a 23-year-old butcher like a legend. Hong responded that while Baek was a Bull, Maru was a butcher, and that made all the difference. Hong's faith in Maru was justified. At that very moment, Baek was defeated by his own weapon. Maru had struck his vital points with precision, causing Baek to lose strength and drop the hammer. Maru stood over him, calm and calculating. Baek had assumed the strikes were random, but they had been part of a deliberate plan to immobilize his nerves. Maru referred to Baek as a cow and drove the dagger into him like a nail, ending the fight. Minutes later, Maru arrived at the party. Hong had prepared. A banner welcomed him as the new manager. The employees cheered his arrival, but Maru remained stoic. He pulled two badges from his shirt cois and Baek sand threw them to the ground. The room fell silent. You called the fallen men pigs, triggering the guards to draw their weapons. He repeated the insult, calling them filthy pigs. The guards attacked in unison. Maru, now wielding a new dagger and Baek's hammer, was ready to take them all on. Hong watched from his chair, amused but aware that he needed to intervene. He pulled something from his pocket and shouted Maru's name, cheering him on. The employees were stunned. Hong had taught Maru to treat pigs like humans because even passive-looking animals could attack. Maru applied those teachings against the guards. He knocked them out with single blows, then turned his attention to the remaining men. Some guards were outraged that Baek's hammer was being used by a mere butcher. Maru, unfazed, took a deep breath and executed the second technique. Hong had taught him draining the red liquid from the body by piercing the jugular vein. The memory of the method was vivid in Maru's mind. The attacks were terrifying to onlookers, but he didn't stop there. He moved on to the third step, skin removal. He applied the technique to his enemies with surgical precision. Hong finally stepped in, telling Maru to save the remaining steps for later. The room was a mess. Maru noticed a few men still standing. The employees now understood that Maru truly deserved the title of manager. Maru considered finishing off the rest, but Hong stopped him, saying it was time to end the violence. Suddenly, Maru attacked Hong with the hammer. Hong blocked the blow with his bare hand and told Maru he understood his confusion, but he needed to learn to distinguish people from pigs. To prove his point, Hong shattered the powerful hammer with his hands. He tossed aside the cake and asked if Maru realized he had been killing people. After the confrontation, Hong told him to enjoy the party. But Maru was only interested in one thing: his sister's whereabouts. He threatened to kill Hong if he didn't answer. Just then, a female voice entered the room. Kim was devastated to see the cake ruined. Tears streamed down her face as she asked who was responsible. A guard tried to blame the boss, but Hong silenced her by stepping on her face. The blame shifted to Kim, enraged, fired a shot that narrowly missed Maru's head. He ducked and tried to assess the situation, but Kim didn't give him time. She closed the distance and kicked him in the chin. Maru hadn't expected her to be so skilled in hand-to-hand combat. Kim declared she would teach him a lesson for destroying her cake. Hong warned Maru to be careful. Kim was the best operative North Korea had ever trained, but the warning came too late. Maru was already in her crosshairs. The scene shifted to the past. Kim had once eliminated a gang of criminals and then calmly ate their food. Hong had been shocked to discover the culprit was a woman. When he asked if she was a soldier from the Southern Army, Kim denied it. Hong, seeing potential, offered her more food and suggested she start a mukbang broadcast. Kim didn't know what that was, so Hong showed her a video. He explained she could earn money just by eating. Her eyes lit up. Initially, she refused his offer, calling it a bribe, but she eventually agreed in exchange for unlimited food. A week later, Hong learned of a strange explosion in Gazin. Based on Kim's appearance, he confirmed she was responsible. He scolded her for failing to bring back a single intact popsicle. Back in the present, Maru narrowly avoided another shot. Fighting Kim was proving to be a challenge. Meanwhile, one of the guards, writhing in pain on the ground, took the opportunity to call his daughter. Upon learning she would be sleeping away from home, he jumped up, thrilled to have a night alone with his wife. Junchek was ready to try for another child. The other guards encouraged him to leave. Hong found the men chatting behind a white curtain and grew furious. He wanted them working overtime. As they argued, the fight between Kim and Maru raged on. Hong asked who they thought would win. The guards supported Kim. Hong agreed she was highly skilled, but reminded them that Maru was a prodigy. In just 1 year, Maru had mastered every technique taught to him. In a single month, he had executed the most difficult procedures. Hong had tried to slow his progress, but even tasks that would challenge a senior official took Maru less than a minute. Hong believed he had found the ideal man. He wasn't sure Kim would win. At that moment, Maru disarmed Kim, knocking the gun from her hand. Hong shouted in admiration, demanding his employees praise the butcher. They obeyed, but Kim wasn't finished. She drew a dagger hidden in her pants. The fight continued. But when it came to blades, no one surpassed Maru. Kim realized he was mimicking her movements. Hong watched with fascination. He believed in both fighters, but knew that in the end, agility would decide the victor. Kim could strike first, but Maru might still win. Hong waited, curious to see how it would end. As the tension between Maru and Kim reached its peak, Hong suddenly struck the ground between them, startling everyone in the room. The employees froze. In shock, Hong pointed to himself and called Maru over. Kim, visibly frustrated, demanded to know why the boss had chosen a brat for such a high position. Hong didn't answer her directly. Instead, he handed her a free food ticket to an upscale restaurant. Kim immediately chased after it, declaring she'd return in an hour. Everyone knew she would be back and she wouldn't come quietly. With Kim gone, Hong exhaled deeply and asked Maru how he was doing, but before he could finish, Maru lunged at him, demanding to know where his sister was. Hong shoved him back and questioned why he was so curious. That simple question caused Maru to freeze, overwhelmed by fear. Memory surfaced. He recalled the day at age 21 when he learned of his father's death. From that moment, he had become the head of the family. Desperate to support them, he accepted Hong's offer to work. Back then, he believed Hong cared for him like a son. He had even convinced himself that someone truly loved him. But now, seeing what had happened to his mother, Maru's patience snapped. He attacked Hong again, demanding answers. Hong welcomed the duel, using it as an opportunity to refine Maru's technique. He criticized the boy for failing to distinguish between real and fake openings in combat. You realized that exploiting Hong's weaknesses wouldn't work. He needed a new strategy, but before he could think, Hong interrupted, asking if Maru really believed he'd have time to strategize during a fight. With Maru's guard down, Hong struck a vital point between his legs. Maru screamed in pain. Hong expressed disappointment, saying he had expected more from his student. Maru struggled to stand, determined to fight back, but his efforts were futile. The employees watched in discomfort, knowing Hong was a monster in combat. Defeating him wouldn't be easy. Hong smiled as Maru continued his attacks. He explained that in a direct fight, his heavyweight class gave him a natural advantage. Maru would have to push himself harder. Feeling humiliated, Maru refused to abandon his dagger. It was as if his life depended on it. Suddenly, Hong hurled a table at him. Maru tried to use the moment for a sneak attack, but it failed. Hong adjusted his shoes and shoved Maru again. The butcher was struck repeatedly, unable to respond. Finally, Hong offered to explain why he had targeted Maru's family. But first, he asked how much Maru thought the hallucinogens he had burned in Japan were worth. The answer, $300 billion. That money was now gone, and Hong assured him the Japanese were furious. Hong claimed he had protected Maru from their wrath. That was the role of a loyal friend. But he hadn't hesitated to retaliate for the damage Maru had caused. What happened to Maru's family, he said, was simply the consequence. Now, the bodies in the room were proof of Hong's ability to recover the lost fortune. He extended his hand, offering Maru a partnership. If they worked together, the $300 billion could grow even larger. Hong walked away, saying Maru could begin once he had recovered. Maru finally broke his silence. He asked why Hong had done all this. Why hadn't he simply talked to him? Hong replied with a chilling smile, because this way was more interesting. Maru laughed bitterly, calling Hong a lunatic. Both men seemed to have lost their minds. But Hong's smile faded when Maru stood up. The butcher said he had once seen Hong as a mentor, even a father figure, but now he realized Hong had manipulated his family for amusement. Maru declared that Hong wasn't even worthy of being compared to a pig. He vowed to finish him off. His eyes made his intent clear. Hong invited him to do whatever he wanted, tearing off his clothes and exposing his body. He challenged Maru to judge whether he truly resembled a pig. He added that no matter how skilled a butcher was, confidence was essential. As they argued, Yoon-sik, one of the guards, wrote a farewell letter to his wife, revealing the location of his savings. He was convinced he wouldn't survive the chaos. The fight between Maru and Hong escalated. Hong expressed sadness at Maru's words, saying he had taught him everything. But Maru now used those teachings against his mentor. He waited for Hong to strike, then grabbed the axe handle and countered. The blade stopped inches from Hong's face. Hong didn't expect anything to happen, but Maru struck his chin, and blood splattered on the floor. The employees were stunned. Even Hong was shocked when his glasses shattered from the impact. Maru had turned the dagger and adjusted its position perfectly. He tried the attack again, but Hong kicked him away. The boss wouldn't allow another surprise. At first, he thought Maru was bluffing, but now he realized the boy was serious. Hong had no choice but to finish him first. Maru rose in pain. Knowing escape was impossible, Hong appeared before him and asked if he could predict the direction of the next axe strike. The weapon came down with full force, but was blocked by the hammer Maru had taken from Baek. The axe shattered on impact. Maru seized the moment and struck Hong, just as he had struck Baek. The attack reminded Hong of the bull. The hammer seemed to amplify the user's rage. But what truly alarmed Hong was that Maru was using Koi's techniques, moves he had copied in mere moments. Then Maru shifted to Kim's style. Yoon-sik watched in awe. He hadn't believed anyone could replicate the techniques of every opponent they'd faced. For the first time, he felt Hong might lose. And that's where we'll leave our blood-soaked soap opera for today, folks. Maru's slicing, Kim's kicking, and Ki-jong's still out here playing villain bingo like it's a full-time job. If you thought your family dinners were awkward, just be glad no one's throwing you through windows or detonating hotels. This has been Luna Dreams, where we recap manga so intense, even your therapist needs a therapist. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell because missing an episode here is like dodging a dagger in a council meeting. Unlikely and painful. Until next time, keep dreaming. Just maybe not in buildings rigged to explode.